Hey guys, welcome back to Vertical Momentum. I'm your host, Richard Kaufman, also known as the Comeback Coach. Guys, if you want to get fit, if you want to get healthy again without all the bullshit, this episode is for you. I'm going to be talking to my brother Patrick. I just met him from my friend Joe Graham, and we have such a great relationship already. I'm so glad that we're talking together. And October 16th, his bride is going to be on the show. So that's going to be awesome. Patrick and Meagan are the first family of fitness in my mind. They're amazing. We're going to be talking about health and fitness. So I want to give a big shout out to Joe Graham. I want to thank you guys. Our new hoodies are out for fall. If you buy any of our swag, 100% of the proceeds go to help veterans struggling with homelessness and PTSD. I don't make any money off of it, so I'll put that in the show notes. And also, Monster Energy, thank you for keeping me going. Of course, I drink the sugar-free one. But, guys, if you love energy drink, Monster Energy is it. So, Patrick, my brother, welcome to the show. How are you?
What's up, Richard? I'm doing really well, man. Happy to be here. I'm grateful to start my morning off being able to chat and as you and I spoke about before we went live, debunking some of the bullshit in the fitness industry. So I think that's a great way to start off a Wednesday.
All right. I love it. So first question right off the get, because I have a traumatic brain injury, and if I don't ask, I'll forget.
Sure.
What is your definition of resiliency?
It's a good question. My definition of resiliency comes down to one word, and that's presence. And the reason I say that is because you can't know where you're going unless you know where you're at. And once you understand where you're at, that allows you to really gain an understanding of what next micro steps or bigger steps you need to make in order to keep resiliency going through whatever positive, negative, or neutral season of life that you're trying to navigate. So I'd say it comes down to being present.
Okay, and I love it. I guess that's where you get the name Aware Fitness, but we'll talk about that in a little bit.
Sure.
So give us a quick down and dirty. Let's hop in the DeLorean. Let's go way back. Tell me a little bit about where you come from, where did you grow up, and how did you get into this crazy world of fitness?
Yeah, I like it. We're jumping into the DeLorean. Back to the Future is one of my favorite series of movies of all time. So let's do it, Doc.
How did I know that?
So right on, dude. I'm originally from Peralta, New Mexico. So a small rural town just south of Albuquerque, New Mexico, which is where I now live. My wife and I now live. And you could say my roots in the fitness industry come from the fact that I've always been an athlete. I was a 3-sport athlete at a young age, playing soccer, basketball, and baseball. And then throughout high school and into college, I focused all my energy on playing baseball. And then when I stopped playing baseball, I knew I obviously wanted to continue to stay active. So I decided towards the end of my high school baseball career, I wanted to go to college for exercise science. I wanted to learn everything I could learn and understand when it came to the human body and how essentially I could make a living being healthy. And what really, I want to say, catapulted that was at the age of 19 when I was in my freshman year in college going through the exercise science program. I had a series of conversations with a family member that really, really motivated me to kind of double down on what I was doing with school and essentially building a business around fitness, where long story short, I had a family member impose their limiting beliefs on me. I'm sure many of your audience and yourself included have experienced instances where we always hear people say, oh, bad health just runs in the family. Right. And we just kind of assume that that's kind of like our predetermined destiny when it comes to our health. There's nothing that we can do about it. So I'm sharing with this family member what I'm learning at school. And they pretty much told me, Patrick, that's awesome. That's great. But inevitably, you're going to end up overweight and unhealthy like and he patted his stomach, like pretty much the rest of the male figures in my family. And it was at that moment at 19 years old when I'm, full of piss and vinegar, I internally said, fuck you, watch me, man. Like I'm going to really push back against the limiting beliefs of my family and the limiting beliefs of society. So got my degree at the University of New Mexico with a concentration in exercise science. And then started working as a personal trainer at a local big box gym here in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Was training people in person, which was fun, which was great, but it only took me maybe a year or so to realize this was not what I was going to do long term. So I started to, I know you're a Gary Vee fan, so I built my own side hustle. And I was doing online personal training and nutrition coaching as a side hustle to my in-person coaching. And then just kept building that during the 2010 to 2020 era, so around 10 years. And then when the pandemic hit, that was kind of Mother Nature's way of telling me, hey, dude, go do this full time, go take it out into the world. So I decided to do that. And obviously I met my wife along the way, who's a registered dietitian. So she focuses on the nutrition portion of things. And the rest is history, man.
All right. So, let's talk about fitness a little bit. Because I used to personal train. I am NASM certified, ISSA certified.
Cool.
I've worked with several Mr. Olympias, getting them ready for shows.
Cool.
Players from the NBA, NFL, Major League Baseball, WWE. But for me, and I ran Lennox Lewis's training camp for 5 fights when he was the world champion. But the reason I bring this up is because once I worked with professional athletes, I could not go back to working with civilians, I would say. Because like when I worked with Triple H, there were no days off. He had his food, he had his workout plans, he was dialed in, and there were no excuses like, you know what? It's a beach day. I'm going to go to the beach, or I just don't feel like it today. And when you're working with professional athletes, they have a focus, and it's hard to go back to, Joe Blow from Idaho. So talk to us about what a good personal trainer is and what a personal trainer you see on Instagram that bought all their followers. And if they do have somebody that they train, they just use cookie cutter workout plans and food plans for everybody. All 1,000 people get the same workout plans and the same food plans. So what's the difference between a good, and I'm saying good or great personal trainer, and an online guru that's 18 and has abs?
Right. Yeah, man, great question. So I think it comes down to 2 distinct categories of a coach, right? You had made mention a good or a great coach or a not so great coach. And I think it comes down to 2 definitive categories. So a great or a good coach is person-centered in their approach. And what that essentially means is they are willing to meet their client where their client is at. Because you and I both know this, I'm sure your listeners know this, everybody's health and set of circumstances and past are different than the next person. So a good or a great coach is person-centered in that they have a genuine interest in getting to know the individual that they're helping, getting to know their background, getting to know their medical predispositions, so that way they can actually custom tailor a movement plan or exercise plan and nutrition plan, in the case of my wife being a registered dietitian, that fits their needs and fits their unique set of circumstances. A poor, not so good, trash coach is utilizing what is called a coach-centered approach. And a coach-centered approach is very ego-driven. It's very me as the coach where I'm at, which is very, very common and prevalent, unfortunately, in the fitness industry, where they have the client expecting themselves to meet the coach where they're at. So to go from 0 to 100 miles an hour in no time at all, to completely overhaul every dimension of their life in order to meet the coach's criteria. And that's also where it sounds like you see some of that element of coaches putting together cookie cutter plans that aren't really meant to get the client to their goal and teach them how to stay at their goal. It's essentially they're offering a band-aid solution to something that needs surgery. So they're often perpetuating a lot of the lack of consistency and frustration so many of us or past versions of ourselves or your listeners have dealt with. It's very much like, hey, you're just going to do what I know works for me, which we all know what works for me may not work for you. So it's a difference between a coach-centered approach and a person-centered approach.
And I totally agree 100% what you're saying. And for me, if I tell everybody, I'm not an easy coach. I'm going to tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. So if you're not going to be thick-skinned, I'm not for you. I may not be for you, because I might just call you up and I'd be like, Patrick, bro, are you sitting on your ass today? Or are you actually out doing something?
Right.
So, and I think that's what makes the difference between a good coach and a bad coach. But then also, like I said, I was with GNC for 30 years, and I would have women come in mad at their coaches because they gained 15 pounds of water weight. And I asked them, well, what are you taking? Oh, well, my coach has me on 5 to 10 grams of creatine monohydrate. And then I'm like, okay, wait a minute. Hold on a second. He has you on 10 grams of creatine monohydrate. And at this time of the month, you have your period too. So he didn't tell you you're going to be gaining water weight, right, plus what you're gaining because of your hormones. And I think a lot of trainers don't think about stuff like that. They're just like, well, if the creatine monohydrate worked for Joe, it's going to work for Joanne.
Right.
And sometimes it will, but sometimes it don't. But that's when you're making those cookie cutter programs, is when you start running into stuff like that, right?
Yes, exactly. Because as you're touching on, there's a lack of depth with a cookie cutter program. It's by design built to not go in depth with people, right? It loses the opportunity of I'm sure you've heard this a lot. It perpetuates a lot of black and white thinking. It perpetuates a lot of black and white behavior, and it doesn't create any sense of interest or nuance in the gray area. And to your point of this customer coming in and talking to you about that, it's like the trainer's job is to help provide a pathway into that gray area so you can start having more nuanced conversations, so the client can understand, in that case of creatine, how that may or may not affect their body weight, their performance, how they feel, etc. But yeah, if you're just throwing something at somebody expecting it to work, you're kind of leaving people hanging to dry.
And one thing I love about you and your bride, and I call her your bride because my bride is my bride. So, and yeah, I know you guys have that kind of relationship, that you guys break it down Barney style. You break it down to the basic shit.
Right.
And because, like, for me, my first foray into bodybuilding was watching Pumping Iron with Arnold. Mm-hmm. Arnold and Frank Zane and Franco Colombo. And they were doing basic shit. Mm-hmm. They were eating basic food, and they look 10 times better than a lot of the people that compete today. But it was basic stuff done very well. But also, and I want to talk about it, they worked out with weights. But if you watch the movie, a lot of the times they're out on the beach. They're out exercising outside, walking, they're running on the beach and stuff like that. So it doesn't always have to be in the gym using 40 different exercises to hit your main goals, right?
Right. Yeah, and I think you bring up a really good point when it comes to diversifying your environment with movement, right? And it makes me think of a motto my wife and I always use with clients. It's a very simple formula, and it states something is better than nothing. And what that lends itself to is, like, we have clients that don't love going to the gym or, a conventional gym. And what that does is it provides a greater level of creativity in finding, going back to that person-centered kind of customized approach. Like you said, it allows people to know, oh, I can work out outside. I can go for a walk. I can go for a jog. I can go ride my bike. I can go kayak. Like, as long as you're moving your body, you're winning. And as long as we're able to do that consistently, all of that is going to compound over a longer period of time. And to your point, you're doing the basics. And when you're doing the basics really well, you start to build a healthier relationship with your exercise and your eating in most cases.
And I agree with that. Like for me, I have a lot of issues with my eyesight. I can't have a lot of pressure in my eyes, so I kind of have to change things. Right. So I walk a lot, and what I did is, because I'm a knowledge nerd. I've read over 6,000 books, and I've got 18 books and 2 audios going right now. I punish myself that I'm not allowed to listen to my audio books unless I'm out walking. So for me, that that's kind of like a punishment reward thing.
Sure.
But I feel better, like even if it's just 45 minutes to an hour, not only am I getting my mind right, but I'm also getting my body right. Yep. And I think for people that are just starting out, I always say, try, if you have a pool, if a pool is available, I think swimming is a great low impact exercise. But I think the best exercise for me, walking, and it's free, it's pretty much free. So, talk to us about how important, because I believe, like you said, perfect. I'd rather have somebody that has imperfect action than perfect inaction. Because a lot of people get so worried, and then they get, paralysis by analysis, and they don't do shit.
Right.
So talk about, if somebody say, my perfect listener is a 45-year-old male, veteran, father of 3, brand new business owner, pre-diabetic, and wants to get back in shape. So what are some of the things that you would talk to that person if they're healthy, but if they're pre-diabetic? What were some of the things that you would suggest for them?
Sure. And I'll piggyback, what you mentioned, I think is a great space to piggyback off of, right? Is it comes down to, in my opinion, taking a little bit of an honest, open, and compassionate assessment of one of the 7 dimensions of deep health that my wife and I coach our clients through, and that's your environment. And just paying attention to how your environment is either positively, negatively, or neutrally influencing your access and availability to consistent movement and access and availability to healthy food choices, right? We talked about this before. You can't know where you're going unless you know where you're at. So knowing where you're at, first and foremost, is great. And to your point around walking, thinking through a resourceful, how do I want to put this? The first thing that comes to mind is throwing out the vast majority of what the mainstream fitness industry has told you should be doing, and throwing that in the trash, and acknowledging you're building a plan that works for you. And if your workouts in this particular case don't look the exact same way that, say, the internet, Instagram fitness guru told you is right, knowing that that's okay, because you're building something that's customized. So to your point around movement, thinking about, when it comes to exercise, how can I make this so easy it's almost laughable, right? And you were sharing earlier, walking, like you were laughing about it. It's like, it's free, man. Like it's there, it's available. And encouraging your listeners or that particular individual to really lean into that. Like when they find themselves being like, oh my God, that's so easy, it's almost a joke. That needs to be your kind of compass in letting you know that, okay, I need to keep moving in this direction. Because what happens in the fitness industry, unfortunately, is they try to overcomplicate the fuck out of everything. They try to make it seem like it's this super specific, nuanced, crazy thing, when in all actuality, there's a series of things that you can do that are small little adjustments that are really going to give you a higher return on your time investment that don't involve doing something super crazy. And in the case of what you just shared, walking is probably that first step, because then you can walk around your house, you can walk around the outside of your house, you can walk around your neighborhood, and that lets you know that you're moving in the right direction.
And you know, and people laugh at me, and I don't care. I mean, I'm going to be 56 years old coming up in January. When I walk in the morning, I play Pokemon.
Nice.
Yeah, just so I know, because some days I'm like, you know what? I really don't want to walk today, but it'll say, hey, you're on a 5-day streak. And I'm like, shit, I don't want to lose my streak. So let me get out there and walk. So whatever it takes to get you to do it. Now, like for me, I learned a lot from a gentleman. His name was Mr. Bill Phillips. Years ago, he had the Body for Life, and I actually won one of the years for the Body for Life. And something that he taught me was, because a lot of times when we're changing the way we're eating, we think, okay, I can never have pizza again.
Right.
I can never have whatever it is. And Bill told me that when I met him in Colorado was, Rich, you can have a slice of pizza on a Wednesday, but if you wait till Sunday, you can eat the whole pie. So for me, what I used to do, and what I still do now, if I know, you know what, I can cheat today on my diet, or I can have a whole cheat day on Sunday, and then that's it for the whole week. Because I know that if you cheat every other day, you're pretty much negating your whole week.
Mm-hmm.
But if you cheat if you stay pretty much on track for the whole week, once you have that cheat meal or cheat day, that Monday, your metabolism is jacked. I mean, it's like you just added fuel to the fire. So how important is it to make sure that you're just not focused on doing one thing and not having that one thing? Because when you do have that one slice of pizza, you're going to have 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you're off for the whole week. So how important it is to, make sure you have a plan if you're going to go to a wedding, or if you're going to go, even like I had Clark Bartram on, one of the fittest men in America. He says, I'm going to go to a wedding. I'm going to have the cake.
Right.
But he's like, but that Friday and that Sunday, I'm going to be strict because I know I had that cake. So how important is that mindset?
The mindset's huge, man, because what you're talking about is, again, it ties into this environmental component and how it can influence our eating and exercise related decisions, right? So the piece that's really fascinating is like, what kind of mindset and what kind of plan do you want to have going into those environments? Because to your point, a wedding, traveling, a birthday, I consider, this is October 2nd as we're recording this. In my eyes, we're in the holiday season. The holiday season is kicked off. We're about to make our way deep into the holiday season. And the mindset is the first thing that needs to be taken into account, because the holiday season, traveling, etc., everything that I mentioned earlier, for most people is synonymous with completely falling off track. Right. So it goes back into that all or nothing, black or white dynamic that many of us have been so used to. So then we think about, oh, this environment is synonymous with me falling off track. So I'm just going to say, fuck it. I'm going to throw my hands up and I'm just going to go ham this entire time. The second piece of that, when you're talking about what kind of plan people can have in place, and this is probably the most fun part of mine and Meagan's coaching of our clients during these different through these and with these different environments, is two primary habits that are the most important habits we guide clients through. Is one, slow down when you're eating, regardless of what you're eating, and work towards eating until you're 80% full. So what that essentially helps people do when they find themselves in an environment that is synonymous with, we'll just say, less preferable food options, right? Like to the point of your other podcast guests, eat the cake. Like at no point are Meagan and I going to ever let someone know, hey, that favorite food that you like, that favorite meal that you share with your kids, or your family, yeah, don't eat that anymore. That would be the most ridiculous thing for myself and Megan to encourage somebody to do. So we kind of flip the script around, hey, you can still eat that food, just eat it mindfully. Well, how do you eat it mindfully? Well, you eat it mindfully by trying to limit your distractions, be present with the food that you're consuming. Put your phone away. Try to not eat while you're in front of the television. Try to not eat at your desk. Literally be present with the food and the people that you're in front of sharing that meal. And then just take time to slow down. Put your utensils down in between bites. Actually chew the food. I call it be your own food critic. Like really, really touch or tap into the sensory experience that you're experiencing, the taste, the sound, the smell of the food. Really tap into it. Build that presence. Slow down. Drink a couple sips of water in between bites. What that essentially does, regardless of what you're eating, by the way, if you're eating something healthy, you do this. When you're eating something that's not as healthy, you do this. What it allows you to do is it allows your body physiologically to give your digestive system time to actually digest the food. It takes about 15, 20 minutes for the food that you chew to make its way down your esophagus and into your stomach for it to actually be digested, and then your stomach to send a signal to your brain letting you know that you're full. So then when you're talking about a plan, people can go into these parties, these weddings, and be like, oh, I still have a plan B. I can still try to eat mindfully, and I can eat this tasty food item where in the past I would, like you said, I would eat one slice of pizza and then two and then three. And then they're like, oh, in the past I would eat like 4 or 5 because I was rushing through it. I was distracted. Now I find out I actually only need about 1 to 2 slices of pizza and I'm full. And you're able to check those boxes of being both satisfied and satiated.
And you're saying you're speaking the truth. Now, what hack that I use that, and like I was with GNC for over 30 years. I was with Kumar's GNC for over 15. And I always keep a case of lean shakes at my house. By the way, I love the strawberry lean shakes. But what I'll do if I know I'm going to a party or a wedding, on the way there, I'm going to down a protein shake.
Sure.
Just so I know, hey, it's going to help level out my blood sugars.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to keep me full a little bit.
Right.
But at least I know mentally, okay, you had a protein shake. And if you had it mentally, I'm thinking, okay, that you're not going to eat as bad because you just had a protein shake. You're kind of full and your blood sugars are not going to be off the chart.
Sure.
So, and that's something I teach some of my clients. I'm like, listen, if you're going to go to a wedding or something, just have a protein shake before you get there. Because it'll keep your blood sugars stabilized. So you're not. So when you do eat something, it's not going to be off the wall. That's why, I believe that when I do eat, like when I go out to eat to dinner, anytime I go out, I actually get the steak and lobster. But that's me. I always make sure I eat my proteins, like for the first 10 or 15 minutes, and then I'll eat everything else. For me, because that it makes me feel a little bit better knowing that I'm eating the proteins and it's going to stabilize my blood sugar. But let's talk about something that I don't know if it's still hot, but for a while keto was hot.
Sure.
And for me, I know my body runs better when I'm eating lesser carbs, but I know, a lot of people are like, oh, I'm going keto. I lost 30 pounds, but 28.72 of that was water.
Right.
And as soon as you have one carb, one grain of rice, you're up 35 pounds.
Right.
So I believe that you need a meal plan it's not a diet, a meal plan that you can use for the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can't stay on keto for your whole life. There's other diets, the apple diet, the watermelon diet, all that crap. So talk to us about how to eat for life, not just a diet. Because the word die just has the word die. Diet, the word has the die plus the letter T. So you don't want to diet, you want to change your eating plans. And so talk about that.
Right. That's a good question, man. So I liked what you had mentioned as far as eating for life. because you're touching on, and you just made mention of it earlier, like you're touching on how to build. A couple things come to mind. How to build a sustainable lifestyle around your food choices, as well as how to build a healthy relationship with food, right? So if we're really wanting to, as you put it, eat for life, it means we have to start having deeper, more nuanced questions that aren't solely about, hey, you're on this diet or you're eating this way solely to lose weight. Don't get me wrong, losing weight is helpful, but if there's not a greater level of depth around other progress indicators that we can focus on that are not solely weight loss, we're just going to perpetuate having more of a bad time and perpetuate people's unhealthy relationship with food, right? Because I think we can all agree, when we just take the time to pause and we take the time to really zoom out, you can't be in weight loss mode all the time. At some point in time, when you get to your goal, regardless of how you got there, you are going to have to figure out how to navigate being in what we call maintenance mode. And it's hard for a lot of people to conceptualize or understand that, because they've constantly been in this roller coaster, as far as like they do really restrictive stuff to try to lose weight. And then quite frankly, they get really exhausted because it's hard to maintain that regimen that the weight, so that it's all this black or white, all or nothing. And then they let go of the reins and then they regain the weight. So it's hard for them to really wrap their head around, hey, there's going to be a point in time where I'm actually going to just need to be in maintenance mode and just exist, which is part of the reason I answered your question earlier around what is my definition of resiliency. It's presence. You have to be present with where you're at, regardless of wherever you're at, whether you're higher in weight than you would prefer to be, or lower in weight, or anywhere between the two. So I love where you're coming from when it comes to eating for life. What does that look like from a client's perspective or even a coach's perspective? It's myself and Meagan having to meet that individual where they're at, even if they're doing a diet that may not be beneficial for them in the long run, but helping them tease out the elements and the lifestyle adjustments and behaviors that are coming, that are happening as a result of that diet. So they're able to tease out a little bit level of a nuance from that diet. So that way, in the event that they don't stick with that diet long term, they're able to kind of get a sense of like, oh, let's say we'll just say it's hypothetically, keto, for instance. Like, maybe they were more aware of being more hydrated on a regular basis as a result of being on that diet or a different diet. And they know that that's an important thing for them to keep with them long term, regardless of whether they're doing keto or they're doing some other diet. So it's helping them tease out nuance based on whatever diet they're in, and finding those pieces of information that they can keep with them regardless of what diet they're on. And then you just continue to stack that, because eventually people do. That's what a lot of the work Meagan and I do, is we help them break up with diet culture. We help them throw that stuff out so that they can have something that just essentially complements their life and doesn't complicate
it. And I totally agree. And something that I love about you and your bride is, and you're kind of like me, if you have a client come sit in front of you, I think before you even start talking about what you're eating, we have to sit down. Like when I have a client, I sit down and I'm like, well, what's eating you? Because I can give you the best workout program, the best supplements, but if your hormones and cortisol levels are out of whack, it doesn't matter what I give you.
Right.
It's not going to work. And I wrote that down. As you see, I'm writing stuff down because, a lot of people don't realize, wait a minute, if I'm stressed out, my cortisol level goes up. My body's automatically going to be in fight or flight. I'm going to be holding on to weight. And no matter what you give me, I can't lose weight because your body's fighting it. Mm-hmm. So how important is, instead of what are you eating, what's eating you?
That's powerful, man. I'm happy to hear. I'm not surprised, but I'm happy to hear you share that, right? Because that's something that's often not talked about in the fitness industry at large, unfortunately. And what it makes me think about is the work that Meagan and I do when it comes to what we're going to prioritize, you're talking about not so much what you're eating, but what's eating you, is we prioritize, we'll call them different lifestyle behaviors and adjustments in a pyramid. And contrary to what the fitness industry tells people, the exercise portion of, we'll call it lifestyle adjustment, behavior adjustment, exercise exists at the very tippy top of that pyramid. And then just below that is nutrition. And then just below that, to comprise the base of that pyramid, is stress management and sleep management. And that represents the what's eating you component of things. Because to your point, I agree. We can give you the best meal plan. We can give you the best workout routine. But if you are not in a space where you are able to consistently and mindfully manage your stress, there's no point in us throwing anything your way. Because if we're not really tackling, and this represents more of the mental, the emotional, the spiritual / existential components or dimensions of what Meagan and I call deep health, that's the root of everything. Because once we get that foundation locked in and help our clients, and in your case as well, help your clients understand, like, oh crap, I'm really stressed all the time. I've got this job that's been stressing me out, or maybe they don't know how to best manage their emotions or how to navigate their mental health. And those are the actual primary blocks that are making it difficult for them to stay consistent with a good, say, set of food choices, or stay consistent with their exercise routine. It comes down to stress management. But like you're saying, the coach has to be willing to meet them there and get to know them as a person on a fundamental level first. So that way, if they do make any recommendations around exercise and nutrition, they're tailored with that stress management component in mind.
Thank you, Paul, for hanging out with us today. I appreciate you. Thank you for everything that you do for us. So let me ask you a question, because like I said, I was with GNC for over 30 years. Had one of the strongest stores in the world at one point. But I knew that January 1st, January 2nd, everybody's coming in with the new sweats, the new kicks.
Yep.
Everybody's going to put like $500 worth of shit on the table. And what I would do is I would go around to the table and I would look through their products, and I'm like, you don't need this. You don't need this. You don't need that. And I'm putting shit back on the shelves. And I'm like, you don't need this.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people are like, wait a minute, you're taking money off the shelves, off out of the register. And I'm like, wait a minute. I'm building a relationship here with you. Mm-hmm. I'm building a generational relationship with you. I want you to live.
Right.
I want you to bring your kids here.
Right.
So, and that's happened because I got one of the guys, he came to me and I helped him out. And then I helped his son get ready to be the starting quarterback for the Tennessee Volunteers. So, because I cared about him, mm-hmm. and not just tried to make a dollar.
Right.
I was able to take care of his son and get him in a top tier school as a quarterback. So, let's talk about supplements, because I know a lot of gurus, they want you to become they want to coach you, but you have to buy all their supplements,
right,
either through their company or through a code. Where for me, I'll tell everybody, if you want to start out, everybody asks me, what do I need? What kind of supplements do I need? And I'm like, listen, I break it down Barney style. I'm like, you need a greens multivitamin, a good protein. And I prefer protein isolates because it's easier on my stomach. Mm-hmm. And depending on your age, like me, I need a little extra kick. So I use the sugar-free Monster. And for people that can't have, caffeine, I get them on beetroot because it gives them natural energy, gets you blood flow. So I don't think, because a lot of people, they think, well, I want to lose weight, so I need the right supplement. No, right. The word is supplement. It's right. Supposed to supplement your diet, mm-hmm. supplement your routine. So let's break down supplements real quick because I can geek out on that subject.
Sure. Yeah. Well, and I think you'll have a really good time chatting with my wife about that, because she definitely has a greater breadth of knowledge in that regard than I do. However, I'm definitely happy to chat relative to what's within my wheelhouse. So I'll echo what you just made mention, right? Supplements are there to supplement where you are currently at. They are not there for you to replace anything that you're doing, right? And a lot of it has to do with taking an open, honest assessment of your current food related foundation, right? And supplements exist for a reason, because there are individuals who do have micronutrient deficiencies of some sort based on, say, this is where we get kind of blended into a little bit of the clinical component of what Megan and I provide, with her being a registered dietitian, where, yeah, based on your blood work, we can assess what you are proficient in, what you are deficient in. But before we even recommend supplements, we really run an assessment of, like, what foods can you reincorporate into your diet to help fill those gaps in? And then if those gaps aren't being filled in based on the consistency you have with the foods that you're eating, yeah, let's utilize supplements. But it's looking at that through the lens of, like, how can it improve your health, as opposed to it being, how do supplements need to be virtually synonymous with people's weight loss journey? And it speaks to the marketing strength of the supplement industry as a whole in making supplements synonymous with weight loss, right? I went through it during my era of bodybuilding as well, to where it's just, there's this element of consumerism that can kind of come in place, to where it's like, in order to truly validate somebody's journey, they feel like, to your point of those customers being like, why are you taking stuff off the shelf? Like, you're obviously there to help them as an individual. I wish more people were in your position and were behaving in the way that you were. But a lot of people, especially in Western culture, in order for their journey to feel validated, they feel that they have to be spending a certain amount of money, in this case, on supplements. So therefore, their weight loss journey does not feel valid, does not feel legitimate, if they're not buying $200, $300, $400, $500 worth of supplements to, quote unquote, help their weight loss journey, when they maybe and likely haven't even taken an assessment of their kitchen and their grocery shopping and their eating out habits.
And that's something that I love. And the bodybuilding and fitness industry is a very slimy industry.
Yes,
it looks healthy, but it really isn't. Because if you see a guy on stage, like I said, I've got many guys I got ready for get ready for the Olympia stage, and they're at their weakest stage. Mm-hmm. Because they have no fat. A lot of them are using diuretics, mm-hmm. and unfortunately we lost Andreas Munzer because of diuretic use. But for me, you don't stay in the fitness industry for 32 years if you're not above board and honest, mm-hmm. and have relationships with a lot of people. Because like I said, it's a very slimy industry. But something I want to talk about, let's talk about the workout for a minute.
Sure.
Because like I said, I have a lot of friends that were Mr. Olympia competitors, friends with Lee Haney, Dorian Yates. And I mean, if you look at Ronnie right now, Ronnie can't even walk, unfortunately. But you look at somebody like Dorian Yates, he was in and out of the gym in 45 minutes. Mm. Then you get somebody like Ronnie, or somebody like, Jay Cutler or any of these other guys. Some of them were in the gym for 2 to 3 hours.
Right.
So Dorian was in there, used the HIT principle, high intensity training. And then he spent the rest of the time recovering. Mm-hmm. And I see a lot of people, bodybuilders and fitness, they work out, they put the focus on the workout, but they're not putting a lot of focus on the rest, the relaxation, and mm-hmm. the recovery part of it.
Right.
So how important is that aspect?
It's crucial. I think of a conversation that I've had with a coach and mentor, and he helped put things into healthy perspective for me, especially when it comes to the exercise component of things. We think that we can out-exercise our rest. We think we can out-exercise our recovery. We think we can out-exercise our diet and even our mindset. And the old formula that I think is now starting to die off, understandably, and it's important that it is, the old formula that existed when it came to building muscle and getting stronger and getting healthier was stress equals growth. Right? So that's where you would get individuals working out for 2-3+ hours because it was the whole no pain, no gain era, right? Where now, thankfully, we're in a space where we're adding more dimension to that formula. It's stress plus rest equals growth. And it's important for people to understand that both parts of those equations or both parts of that formula represent, in my eyes, just because I'm an exercise science geek, they represent different branches of your nervous system. So stress, pushing yourself in the gym, and even just the stress we deal with on a day-to-day basis living in this country and the work and the demands that are on our shoulders, stress represents the sympathetic nervous system, right? You're constantly on, you're pushing, you're grinding, whether it's in the gym or in the boardroom or whatever it might be. The rest component represents your parasympathetic nervous system. It represents down-regulating your nervous system, relaxing, like feeling relaxed, feeling at ease, feeling content, feeling just really, really in your body, so to speak. Think of how you feel before you go to bed or whenever you get up after a really good night's rest. So it's this healthy balance of like knowing when and how to push hard in the stress component and simulating your sympathetic nervous system, but also acknowledging, okay, if you're able to push really hard with your exercise and your training, we need to be doing the same, if not more, when it comes to your rest. And unfortunately, we're kind of, as a society, we're having to unlearn a lot of the stress equals growth kind of dynamic and acknowledging, hey, I need to have instances where I ain't doing jack shit when it comes to quote unquote exercise, but I'm really focusing on recovering. And that's where the nutrition and stress management portion of things comes in so handy, because like then you can actually grow into a place where you're just super present with your downtime because your eating is where it needs to be, your sleep is where it needs to be, your hydration is where it needs to be, and you don't feel like you have to be exercising your brains out 5, 6, 7 days out of the week.
All right. Now, you mentioned something earlier, and I wanted to talk, and I want to say thank you so much. I'm having such a great time.
Yeah, me too, man.
I'm truly humbled and grateful. But let's talk about limiting beliefs for a minute.
Sure.
I had a conversation with my 22-year-old son yesterday. We're talking about something I'm trying to get him motivated to do. And I told him, you have to set a date for this thing. And I said, because a dream, you're not going to get it unless there's an end date.
Right.
A goal is a dream with an end date. Like because I tell him, because now once I started getting healthy again, I started getting into the whole mindset and learning about mindset, the RAS system, all that good stuff. And I was told by my coach, Mr. Joe Nicasio, he told me that life is going to give you exactly what you ask for. Mm-hmm. It's not going to give you $1 more, $1 less. It's going to give you exactly what you ask for. So if you just say, hey, I want to lose weight, that's not going to get it.
Sure.
But if I say, okay, because I run everything in 90 days. For me, I'm in recovery 30 going on 36 years. And for me, 90 days seems to be the magic point. Cool. Or I'll say, I want to, be around within 5-10 pounds in 90 days. Mm-hmm. And that's the date. So when those dates are coming up, I'm like, all right, I really need to focus on my goal. Right. So how is it, in your opinion, to set achievable and small goals so you can stack them, but to set goals with a date?
Yeah. Super important, man. It makes me think of, I had the opportunity to listen to your conversation with the the one-legged outlaw, and you two were talking a lot about that, right? As far as just the act of sitting down and writing stuff out and how important that is, because I call it make the intangible tangible, right? We can, yeah, there you go, dude. You can either spend all of your time, thinking about the goals and then carrying the weight of those goals in your head, but there's something that shifts whenever you take the time to slow down, get a notebook out, and just creating a story and creating a deeper narrative behind those goals. And I think through that practice, it allows you to, as you were talking in that other podcast episode, it allows you to reverse engineer it, right? So then you can start getting more context around like what your goal is and what a realistic timeline and sustainable timeline in getting you to that goal, especially if you've never done it before. So, I would always recommend just spend some time going through your own version of word vomit and just writing stuff out, getting it on paper, making it real by taking it from being in your head, being in your mind, and putting it down on paper. I think it's crucial for everybody because one, you're taking a little bit of a mental weight off of your shoulders and you're putting it somewhere physical that can exist. So then all you have to do is just, I view it as like you're creating your own library. So you can always go to that document or that notebook and reference that, as opposed to having to jog your memory in conjunction with all the other stuff you're having to deal with and go through in your day to day. So I think it's paramount.
Okay, now it's something I want to talk, and you just mentioned it. One of the things I do when I have any of my clients, whether it's business or whether it's personal training or whatever, I sit down with them, and something I learned from my friend Dean Graziosi, I do the 7 whys.
Okay. Yeah.
I write the why 7 times, and I ask them, well, why do you want to lose weight? I know I want to get healthy. Then you get down to second. Well, I want to get healthy. I got a wedding coming up. But then when you get down to like the 6th why and the 7th why, and you're like, I want to walk my daughter down the aisle. I want to live. So how important is it? Because my first podcast I ever had was called Success, Your Why Powers Your How. So how important is it for a person to actually know their real why of losing weight?
It's absolutely imperative. And the reason I say that is you have to be able to build a deeper, more sustainable fuel source for yourself for the long run. And I think that's another kind of part 2 definition to resiliency, right? Like it's one thing to get started. It's another thing entirely to stay moving and keep momentum going over the long run, right? So you're talking about going through that process of deepening your why. And in my opinion, when you create a deeper why, you create a deeper, more sufficient, more sustainable fuel source for you to refer back to during days, weeks, months, when things may not be as ideal, right? Where the momentum or the motivation may not be there. You're able to really get a sense of like, how much more likely do you think it is that you're going to make a healthy food choice or lifestyle or exercise choice when you're telling yourself, oh, I just want to lose weight. It's a good start. However, as we both can agree, it's broad, right? Compared to, okay, I'm not just doing this for me. I'm doing this for my family. I want to be able to crawl around the floor with my kids. I want to be able to lift my niece or nephew up and carry them and play around with them. I want to be able to walk my daughter down the aisle. There's a difference there. There's a level of depth. So I think building a deeper why builds a deeper root system of the tree of your health that you're ultimately building in the long run. So I think it's absolutely valuable. It's work well worth doing.
It's something I love about you guys is, I love the name Aware Fitness because I believe we have to be aware. Because I read Grant Cardone's book. I don't care what you think about him. I met him, great dude. But a lot of people don't realize he was a recovering addict.
Mm-hmm.
that just became addicted to success.
Right.
And I read his book. The only thing I got out of the book was that, and excuse my language, I try not to curse on here, but self-awareness is a motherfucker. It really is.
Right.
It's once you become self-aware, there's no more excuses,
Right.
because once you realize whether I fail or I win, it's me.
Mm-hmm.
It's nobody has ever shoved, at least I don't remember anybody come into my bed at night and gets a big piece of cake and shoved it down my throat.
Right.
For me, I had to make the choice because, and remember, guys, there's no action without thought.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't pick up that cake unless you think about it.
Right.
And unless you're self-aware, then you can decide, well, I'm going to pick up the cake or not.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about that for a minute. Let's talk about awareness, because for me, I live in the now. I live in this moment.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking to Patrick now.
Right.
I'm not worried about what I have to do later or all that. And I think if we're aware, like you guys talk about, and if you're present, your life could be a whole lot better if you just focus on the now.
Yep.
So talk about awareness, and then talk about focusing, being present.
Yeah. It's powerful. And the reason it's powerful, to your point, is you can't ever take action on something until you've become aware of it. And when we're talking about helping people lose weight, helping people get healthier, helping people build a level of consistency in their nutrition, their exercise, and their lifestyle, the only way to get them to do that is by helping them become aware of the existing behaviors that they currently have, that in most cases have led them to the poorer state of health that they're in. I want to be very clear, though, like helping people build that state of awareness is not rooted in like shaming them. It's not rooted in trying to make them feel bad about who they are or where they're at. It's rooted in helping put them back in the driver's seat of, oh, I did make these decisions to manage or mismanage my stress. I did make these decisions around my food choices. I did make these decisions or have these limiting beliefs around the holiday season or going to a wedding and how that influences my eating. Like, it helps the individual or the client in this case get back in the driver's seat. They're like, oh, okay, yeah, my health may not be where I would preferably want it to be right now, but I now can compassionately, with grace, own the fact that I got myself here and I also can get myself out. But none of that comes by me or Meagan or you barking orders at them. It's a mindset exercise in helping them understand, like, hey, you're the reason you're here. It may not be preferable, and that's okay, but you're also the reason you can get out of this and get where you want to be. So that way, when you start noticing changes in your life, season to season, year to year, you're always in the driver's seat, and you can then make more mindful course corrections so you don't have to deal with a roller coaster of weight fluctuations or emotional fluctuations like maybe the past version of you dealt with in the past.
Okay, so let's talk about, and I talked about this with my friend, with Clark, when I had him on the show. He told me, I'm like, well, what, when you go to, weddings and stuff like that, how do you act? He's like, I don't act like an asshole. Because there's a lot of people and we know a lot of, oh, I'm vegan. Or,
Sure.
You don't have to tell everybody, that, oh, I'm not eating that. It's kind of like me, I'm in recovery, going on 36 years. I don't go around at family parties and be like, I don't drink.
Right.
I just don't drink. Because if you act like that long enough, if you're going to a cousin's birthday party and you're bringing chicken fillets in a cup, and people are like, "The hell are you doing?" Right. You could probably piss some people off because it seems like you're trying to shame them for eating that way. So I just tell people, listen, even if you are on a meal restriction program, just don't be an asshole. Because we see it all the time with bodybuilders. a lot of times they'll go to a family party and they have their all 6-pack containers, everything. And you're like, and it makes people feel stupid. And they're like, oh, I don't eat that stuff. Well, no wonder why people are looking at you and talking shit about you, because you're making them feel uncomfortable just because you're getting ready for a show. Right.
Yep. Yeah. And I'll be honest. I went through that era in my own life, early in my 20s. I went through my own, season or seasons of bodybuilding and navigating that, like you're talking about, that difference in just priorities around eating. But I think the distinction that you're teasing out is like how you communicate that difference is so important, because what works for me or what works for you in our individual and respective seasons of life may not work for other people, but that doesn't make what that other person is doing or what those other people are doing bad. Right. And I think that's what kind of trips a lot of people up. It tripped old past versions of myself up, because I think when you're so early on, whether it's in your recovery journey or your journey of health, you start finding what works for you. And then if you're not careful, you start to think, like what we were talking about, it's the difference between a coach-centered approach and a person-centered approach. I didn't always have a person-centered approach. In order to have a person-centered approach, I had to start with having a coach-centered approach because I didn't know any better. But you start thinking that what works for you works for everybody else, right? And you start feeling like that's how you got to get people to change, is by, in many cases, like you're saying, through being an asshole, unfortunately, trying to shame people into that change. And we all know now you can't shame yourself or other people into change. You only can love them into evolution. So there's that key distinction of how you're communicating your value system, your beliefs, what works for you, while also holding space for other people and what they're doing, and you being okay with what they're doing, because it has nothing to do with you.
All right, so this is a teaching podcast, and like I said, my perfect avatar is a 45-year-old male, father of 3, veteran, brand new business owner. And a lot of us, when we get out, we get fat, dumb, and unhappy. So a lot of us are pre-diabetic, 30, 40 pounds overweight, bones creaking because of the rough times that we had in the military, and then being sedentary. So if, say, Craig, which is my avatar, sits down in front of you and says, I want to get healthy again. I'm going to lose weight. I want to get my blood sugar under control. What would be your top 3 pieces of advice if Craig was sitting down in front of you today on October 2nd, 2024?
It's a good question. So if we were to break it down into 3 primary...
Three actionable steps that they can start taking.
3 actionable steps. Okay. So the first one that comes to mind for me is finding ways and avenues in your day to just slow down and be present. I call my wife and I call it the 5-minute rule. So implementing the 5-minute rule, giving yourself 5 minutes a day to just be present, whether that's meditation, whether that's prayer, whether that's, anything that allows you to be able to just sit in silence and be present with yourself, is one of the biggest returns on that time investment you can ever have. That would be the first one. And especially given the background of your audience and having served and being veterans, is the second piece would be leaning into further support. So it's kind of a 2-parter, and the second and third one would be like, obviously you could say I'm a little biased, but I'm more educated now in being married to a registered dietitian. I would see what options are available through your insurance, through the VA, to collaborate and establish a relationship with a registered dietitian, and being able to build a healthy relationship with food in conjunction with, like you said, they're either pre-diabetic or currently dealing with diabetes. Building a relationship with a registered dietitian, I think, is going to be one of the best investments of time that they could ever have. And then on the movement front, kind of the same thing, not so much in leaning into a personal trainer. When I'm saying this as a personal trainer, but I actually would recommend that they lean into seeing what options are available for physical therapy and finding support structurally around previous injuries that they've had, stuff that they've dealt with that they maybe have kind of swept under the rug. Like you said, bones are creaking, things are feeling weird, things are feeling uncomfortable. Bringing the support of a registered dietitian in and a physical therapist in, and seeing if you can leverage the use of your insurance to have that covered, I think would be great. And those three things essentially can be done without any out-of-pocket expense. So those would be the three things I'd recommend. The 5-minute rule: slow down, give yourself time to do nothing, establish a relationship with a registered dietitian, and establish a relationship with a physical therapist. I truly believe the quality of their lives would improve exponentially.
I love it. And by the way, as you guys know, I'm following you guys on all of your social media. So talk to us about what's coming up with you guys, where we can find you, how we can support your mission.
Yeah. And thanks for holding the space for that, man. We really appreciate it. So best way to stay in contact with me is through Instagram. So for those of you who are interested, feel free to come meet me, chat with me, follow me on Instagram. My handle is Patrick_Ryan Fit. That's RYANFIT. As far as other avenues, I'm sure Richard will have it in the show notes. My wife and I do have a free fitness community on Facebook. For those of you that are on Facebook, we do a live mastermind training on the second Monday of every single month, where we dive into topics relative to our audience and what they're needing help with, nutrition and exercise wise. And then outside of that, long-term things that we're working on, we do have a core program that we're guiding clients through, but we're currently in the process of building a new program that's going to be leveraging the support of my wife as a registered dietitian, where we're going to be kind of merging the fitness aspect of things as to what I'm doing as a personal trainer, and the clinical aspect of things in what my wife does as a registered dietitian, and being able to leverage blood panel work for individuals who have autoimmune disorders or allergies or medical predispositions, and being able to use nutrition through medical nutrition therapy in conjunction with movement and exercise prescription to help people. So that's something long-term that we're working on right now.
And I love that. I got to ask this question because I've never asked it before, so I got to ask it now.
Let's do it.
Me and you are both, I'm a big fan of Korn. I'm a big fan of Head. I think amazing dude. I got to chat with him. I got to talk to him. And he's doing some amazing things in his life. So what is your favorite Korn song?
So what I'm curious, I have to ask you a question real quick for clarity. How did you know I was a fan of Korn?
Bro, I do a lot. I've done probably about 11 hours of research on you.
Okay. Because I was like, well, it's funny because Korn is playing here in Albuquerque, New Mexico tonight on October 2nd. So my wife and I and my sister are going to go watch them tonight. So my favorite Korn song is a song called Thoughtless.
Yes.
And for those of you listening who haven't maybe heard the song or maybe watched the music video, it features Aaron Paul, who played Jesse in Breaking Bad.
Yep.
And the reason I like that song so much is it was one of the first songs that I ever listened to that helped broaden my perspective when it comes to what kind of impact our words and our behaviors can have on other people. I acknowledge that I have been the victim of bullying, and I have also been the person bullying other people. I'm not going to act like I'm perfect. And it really opened my mind to acknowledging that through the lyrics of that song that Jonathan Davis is sharing in that song was like, the way you behave and the way you treat people has an impact on them. And through that song in particular, it completely changed how I viewed interactions with people. Was like, you know what? There have been plenty of instances in which I've bullied other people, and I'm not proud of that. And from that point forward, I'm going to change how I behave, because we're living in a world, and hence what that music video was kind of articulating and portraying was a lot of the school-based violence that we unfortunately see in our country, and how, at least for me, I can take control of how I behave with people and treat them with kindness and treat them with compassion, and let them know that I'm an ally and I'm somebody that can support them. It's my favorite song. I've got it tattooed on the inside of my right arm. My guess is, through the research that you've done, Richard, you've probably seen the YouTube video of me being able to meet the band and all that kind of stuff.
Yep. Like I said, I've done about 11 hours of watching everything you've done. So that's why I had those questions early on that, a lot of people may not have known that you're such a big fan. But and I want to give big shout outs again to Joe Graham, the Joe Graham Show. Guys, if you want to listen to an amazing podcast with an even better person, the Joe Graham Show is totally amazing. And that's how we got connected, through Joe. So I want to tell Joe, I love you, brother. Thank you so much. I want to thank Really Designs. Our new swag is out. We got T-shirts, hats, and we got a new T-shirt coming out that says, I win. I'm a winner. And I also want to give a big shout out to my energy drink. I drink it every day. I want to say, Monster, thank you so much for always keeping me energized and keeping my blood sugar low, because I'm drinking the one without the sugar. So, Patrick, I just want to say I'm so grateful and humbled for your friendship. And I can't wait to see what you guys got coming up. And hopefully we can build a generational relationship from this moment on.
I think so, man. I feel pretty confident about that. Thank you for holding the space. Thank you for showing an interest. Thank you to your listeners. Thank you to you and your listeners for your service to this country and everything that you've done, my friend. Thank you so much.
I love it. And guys, the way I end every show is, guys, every morning you wake up, you have a choice. You can be a victor or a victim. If you listen to this show, you're no longer a victim of your past, but you're a victor of your present and your future. Thank you guys for always showing up. And remember, vertical momentum. The only way to go is up. I love you. My brother, Patrick, have an amazing day, brother.
You too, man. Much love, man.